What's up, everybody? This is Roberto Lorenzo Ferguson, your nutritionist, a guy who shares because I care. Well, today I want to share with you some information that I know can help you, and it can put you in a position where if your goal is to lose weight, if that's your goal, I'm going to help make that easier for you. If your goal is to eat cleaner and not fall prey to cravings of sweet junk food, I'm going to tell you exactly why most people are craving and what you can do to reduce those cravings. So that's going to be the conversation that we're going to have today. So again, I want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. And if you're catching us on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe. If you're on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, hit the like button. That helps me reach more people. And that's the goal. Now, the information I'm going to share today may be information that may be the game changer for you when it comes to not falling prey to cravings. I mean, how many of us experience cravings? Like whether it's, I really want a cookie, or I'm really thinking about cake, or I want to eat something that's outside of what I know would be helping me. You know what I mean? Especially when you're doing really well and you feel like you're eating right and you're doing everything right. But you find yourself getting off track. So before I dive into all of that and share those details, let me know. I would like to hear from you. If you're catching me live, do you ever find yourself craving sweets? If it's not sweets, maybe it's bread. If it's not bread, could it be cereal? Could it be French fries? Like, what are your cravings? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts based on your experience and what you deal with when it comes to what you crave. And then I'm going to share with you. I'm going to give it my best shot. So I don't have any graphics today. I don't have any slides to make it easier for me to convey the information. So I'm going to do my very best to explain to you the role of this hormone called insulin and why insulin as a hormone is the primary reason why most people crave, whether it's sweets, whether it's bread, whether it's soda, anything that touches on food that you would be consuming. If you understand the insulin component and you do what is going to help you control the insulin, because nobody really talks about it, right? Then you'll notice that you won't have the cravings. So I'm going to walk you through it step by step so you get it. And then I'm going to use some examples from many of my clients on how I help them avoid falling prey to cravings. Okay. So tell me, let me see. Let me take a look. Let me see. What's up, Cecilia? She says sweets. Linda says sweets. Sandy says pasta and bread. Yum, yum. Okay, anybody else? Because I'm gonna share with you, and I want to go slow enough so that you get it. Okay, I really want you to get it. And unfortunately, if someone comes in later and they don't get what I'm gonna cover up front, it kind of makes it difficult for them to get it. So for those of you who are here early, and I can kind of walk you through step by step, you're gonna get it. And if you help me by asking me questions or say, Robert, I do get it, just communicate with me, and then it'll make this something where other people can benefit when they come across the replay, whether it's on YouTube or wherever they catch it. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. Now, in order to understand how to take control of your cravings, it does help to understand this thing called insulin. Now, we live in a world where people are always blaming their weight gain, their challenge to lose weight. They're blaming it primarily on sugar. And this is where people are blowing it because they think it's sugar, right? It's sugar that's the culprit. But it's not sugar. I mean, sugar can play a role, but it's not sugar. It's the hormone insulin. It's the hormone insulin. So what is insulin? Insulin is a hormone that comes from your pancreas, and it circulates in your body, and every cell in your body, your bone cells, your liver cells, your brain cells, every cell, trillions of cells, they all have a receptor, meaning they all do something with the hormone insulin. Every cell. And they don't all do the exact same thing. So saying that right there, I want you to know that insulin is a hormone. It has nothing to do with sugar. It's a hormone and is a very important hormone. Some people refer to it as an anabolic hormone because it's often looked at as a storage hormone. Unfortunately, for years, I would call it a fat storage hormone. So insulin plays a huge role in how effective we are at losing weight, the likelihood of us gaining weight, but yet it does a lot of other things. And with different cells, it does different things. So it gets to the cell, and then it kind of tells the cell what it's going to do based on what its job is with that cell. But for the purposes of our time together, I want you to think of insulin as a hormone that gets secreted from your pancreas. Now, if you're a type 1 diabetic, then you don't secrete insulin. So in order to live, you must inject insulin. That's a whole nother conversation. And for those who have to inject insulin, they're doing it because that's how you're going to stay alive. Okay. So what we know about insulin right now is that it's a hormone that comes out of the pancreas, and it can get into our circulation and circulate in the body. Okay. So that's step 1. Any questions about that? If you got a question, just bring it up. Okay. Step 2 about insulin is that insulin is the primary driver for many health conditions people have. So for instance, let's say that you experience migraines on a regular basis, and regular could be twice a month. Some people experience it more often than that. You don't like migraine. Who wants that? Nobody wants that. Well, elevated insulin in your body, and I'm going to talk about what makes it elevated, can be a major contributor to why you have migraines. If you have high blood pressure, elevated insulin is a primary driver for why you have high blood pressure. If you have PCOS, elevated insulin or insulin resistance of the ovaries, which comes about as a result of elevated insulin, oftentimes, that just shows that there's a connection there as far as insulin resistance. Elevated insulin can play a huge role or cause for why people have erectile dysfunction. Now, this is when sometimes the wife who's listening to the live will go and say, "Hey, hubby, you need to listen to this." Okay. Okay, so we know it's a hormone. We know that when it's elevated, and I'm going to say consistently elevated, because insulin does a lot of good things, but when it's consistently elevated, conditions that we don't want start to show up. When a person's a type 2 diabetic, okay, raise your hand if you're a type 2 diabetic. If any of you are a type 2 diabetic, or if you're pre-diabetic, just let me know. Because before you are pre-diabetic, you had to have had elevated insulin. So if diabetes is here, so let's say this is diabetes. Pre-diabetes is here, and no diabetes is here. Okay? So here, you're a full-blown type 2 diabetic. Here, you're not a diabetic, right? So follow me. All this time before this person, and let's say once this hand gets to this hand, full-blown type 2 diabetic. Right now, you're not a type 2 diabetic. So right now, you're not a diabetic, you're not even pre-diabetic, but you have elevated insulin. You have elevated insulin for years before you become pre-diabetic. Years sometimes before you become full-blown type 2 diabetic. So you had to have had elevated insulin before you were a full-blown type 2 diabetic. You had to have had elevated insulin to become insulin resistant or have insulin resistance, which always comes before you're a type 2 diabetic. So elevated insulin is called hyperinsulinemia. Hyper meaning up or elevated. Insulin referring to the hormone. And emia meaning in the blood. Hyperinsulinemia. There are millions of people, and not just adults, kids, right now living with hyperinsulinemia. Remember, you have it for years before the switch turns, if you will, and then you're a full-blown type 2 diabetic. Or you have migraines that are bothering you, that's messing up your days. Or you're in a situation where, you have high blood pressure. You had elevated insulin. So the key here is to understand what will cause my insulin to be elevated for long periods of time. Because if your insulin is not elevated for long periods of time, then you wouldn't have hyperinsulinemia. You would not end up becoming a type 2 diabetic. And when I say type 2 diabetic, we know that over 30 million people just in the United States alone, right now, adults, are type 2 diabetics. We know that we're close to 100 million people right now that are pre-diabetic, and 80% of those don't even know it. And before pre-diabetes, they already have elevated insulin. So practice the word and know the word. And when you see your doctor next time, say, hey, can we talk about hyperinsulinemia? And if you have a really good doctor, they're going to look at you and go, hey, yeah. But they're probably not. They're going to be, what do you mean? Excuse me? Now, some will kind of get it because they understand emia, what that means, and insulin, and they know what hyper is. So they can put it together just based on how the word comes together. But elevated insulin is a problem. And it's happening to a lot of people. And when you have elevated insulin, you're going to crave sweets. You're going to crave bread. You're going to crave a lot of things that wouldn't serve your best interest, but you're craving it, so you eat it. So if you want to remove the cravings, if you want to crush the cravings, then you want to get it to where your insulin levels are not elevated throughout the day. Okay, so you guys let me know if this is making sense. Because if we get this, what's up, Cindy? I don't care. If it's one of you that gets this, what I'm talking about, and you can own it, because that means you're going to really understand it. And we're not going to go much deeper than where we've gotten to at this point. But when insulin is elevated, chronically elevated, which you don't know, it's not like you can see it. You don't have an insulin pump or a test at home that you can check it, at least not in this moment of time. It's not about your glucose. It has nothing to do with your sugar, your blood sugar. So if I were you, and let's say you're a type 2 diabetic, and you're hearing this for the very first time, I would do everything possible to establish a call or some type of communication with me. If you are a type 2 diabetic and you're just now kind of understanding the role of insulin, specifically hyperinsulinemia, and you're just now knowing that, and your doctor didn't go into any good detail about that, reach out to me. I'll help you out. I'll get on the phone. I'll give you some free advice, or rewatch what we're talking about right now. Now, the focus today is on how to crush cravings. And already I'm hoping that you realize that you crush cravings by keeping your insulin levels down. If you have insulin levels elevated, then you fall prey to hyperinsulinemia, then you're going to be craving. So you're not going to crave when your insulin levels are down. Now, I'm not saying a full flat line, but let's just use that term. Insulin levels low. All right, let's just call it low levels. So what would cause insulin to go up? Okay, that's the next part, right? Because if you know that elevated insulin is the problem, then how do I not have elevated insulin? So I want you guys to work with me, those who are catching me. So we know that insulin this elevated is the problem. And some of you guys out there, it breaks my heart. I watch these guys with erectile dysfunction, and they have no idea that they could help themselves. It's not the whole thing when it comes to erectile dysfunction, but it's a crucial part. Is if they can get their insulin levels down, that part of their life can improve. If you have high blood pressure or it's starting to go up, if you can get your insulin levels down, you're going to see major improvements there. So we don't want insulin levels up and elevated all day. So what causes it to go up? Because if you want the solution, you got to look at the cause. If you don't look at the cause and then reverse the cause, what happens? You chase the effects. And then you'll get temporary relief when you chase an effect, because you'll never catch the effect. You got to reverse the cause. And the only way to reverse the cause is to know what causes insulin levels to be elevated. Come on, better preach to some. I am preaching. I'm preaching to somebody. Okay. So what causes insulin to go up? Not just go up, but stay up. So let's first just go over what causes insulin to go up. Food. What you consume is going to cause insulin to go up. Now, I'm not going to get into the ways where you can get insulin to go up without food, but we're talking about what can you do, what's within your power to keep insulin levels from being elevated for long periods of time, because that's what you want to fix. And then we don't have the cravings. Then we don't have or we're less likely to have erectile dysfunction. We're less likely to have those migraines. We're less likely to have high blood pressure. We're less likely to be a type 2 diabetic. And if you are type 2 diabetic, if you want to begin reversing your type 2 diabetes, right, then you got to bring the insulin down. It's not the sugar. That's the truth. So what stimulates insulin? Okay. And remember, I don't have any graphs. I wish I did. I'll do one, soon, where I have some graphs and you can see some pictures. So I'm using words, and that can make it difficult. So for those who are catching me live, if you give me some feedback and say, okay, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, can you explain it more? Give me another analogy. All of that will help me guide and help you. Okay. So what will cause insulin to be secreted from the pancreas as is based on food? Well, there's 3 macronutrients. What are the 3 macronutrients? Okay. Who can quickly tell me what that is? What are 3 macronutrients? Because now we're going to look at the macronutrients, and I'm going to share with you how the macronutrients will cause insulin levels to be elevated or to be circulated in your body. Okay, somebody. Okay, this is teamwork here. Real quick, 3 macronutrients. All right, thank you, Linda. Linda says protein, fats, and carbs. Yes. So protein is a macronutrient. There's 3 of them. So you have protein. So most of the time, like if you look at chicken, you think of protein. If you look at beef, you think of protein. If you think of cottage cheese, you think of protein. Now, it may have fats in it, and it may also have some carbs in it, but it's usually going to be much higher in protein. So think protein. It's like chicken, fish, turkey, anything that used to swim, walk, crawl, fly, had a face. That's going to be a protein source. Now, that also includes tofu, tempeh. So those are proteins. Then you have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates could be bread, pasta, broccoli, tomatoes, plant-based. That's your carbs. And then fats, butter, ghee, avocado, foods that are rich in fat. Now, when you eat fat, let's say pure fat, if this is insulin, if my finger is insulin, if I ate pure fat, I'm going to get that kind of bump of insulin, little bump. And sometimes nothing. Sometimes a little bump, sometimes nothing if it's pure fat. If you ate protein, it's going to be a little bit more. You know, a little bit. If I ate chicken breast, a little bit more than fat. If I had steak, a little bit, but not much, because steak is fat and protein, right? But the protein is going to cause the insulin to a little bit more insulin to circulate compared to fat. So then carbohydrates. That's where you're going to get the bigger insulin release. And the further it is from nature, what I mean by that, a white potato that you can dig up out of the ground and eat it, cook it, do whatever you want with it, that's close to nature. Potato chips that's in a bag with the barcode, that's far from nature. So which one is going to cause the greater insulin secretion? The potato chips. So the more ultra processed a food is, the further a food is from nature, the more insulin you're going to get secreted. So if I just ate highly processed food all day, you know, wake up in the morning, you're on the way to work, you stop at a gas station, you go grab whatever donut, get a few things inside, you're going to have a significant bump of insulin. Then it's time for lunch. You go pick up something fast food, far from nature, ground beef, whatever. That's far from nature, insulin bump. Then you get home, you eat some chips, or maybe eat a candy bar, and then maybe you open up a can of soup, far from nature. You're going to have more insulin that goes up. So the further it is, the food from nature, the more insulin you will have going up. So when they say that, you know, the majority of the calories people are eating, not all people, but a lot of people, is coming from ultra processed foods, insulin levels are up all day. Kids are growing up, insulin levels are up all day. They have hyperinsulin all day, all day, all day. And then 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, all these conditions start to show up. Hyperinsulinemia. And the more the insulin is elevated, the more you crave. The more the insulin is elevated, the more you crave. The more the insulin is elevated, the more you crave. So if I'm eating in a way that's causing my insulin levels to be elevated, and it's happening all day long, eventually I'm going to have a lot of health problems. So then it's like, well, how do I eat to bring the insulin levels down? You got to get closer to nature. You got to get closer to nature. It's not necessarily the sugar. If it was the sugar, then I would say, okay, a white potato, all right, let's say it's high in sugar, has a good amount of starch. You're not going to get the same bump of insulin in potato chips as you would with the potato. So I think we're doing pretty good. Okay, so it's all making sense. Everybody's telling me that it's making sense. Okay, so when I work with a client, actually, I'm gonna share this, and then I'm gonna give you one example of fat, and if everybody has it, we'll be done. If you have questions, we'll go from there. Deal? Okay. So when I first start coaching a client, if you were my client, and some of you guys have been my client, some of you are coaches. In the very first week of coaching a client, I'll have them eat 3 meals a day, and those meals will be composed of protein. Remember what I said about protein and insulin. Very little bump. So if I had chicken breasts, and then I had slow carb vegetables like broccoli, asparagus, tomatoes, all these cool vegetables, then they're carbs, but they're close to nature. So instead of insulin being here from the person who doesn't know this, which is creating a whole bunch of problems they got to deal with, your insulin levels are here. And when insulin gets secreted, it's up maybe 3 hours and it starts to go down. So you secrete it and then it kind of fades. But if you're eating a lot of processed food, order a pizza tonight. Insulin goes up, and it could be up if you have insulin resistance 6, 7, 8, 10 hours. Now remember that, because that's gonna play a huge role if your goal is to drop some body fat. I mean, you could eat little calories, but if insulin levels are up, you're in trouble. Now, can you lose weight with insulin levels up? You can, but it ain't going to be fat. It's going to be other weight, to include skeletal muscle. This is where, I'm not going to go any deeper than that. So during that first week, the first day or two, people are like a little hungry, a little grumpy because they're used to eating certain things. And then the third day comes, you're good. Your gut feels good. You don't feel as bloated. You're not craving anything. You are not craving anything. And after a week, people come in. I say, okay, so now what we're going to do is bring in some fast carbs. So we can bring in some rice. We can bring in some potatoes. We can bring in some bread. We can bring in some couscous. We can bring in different fast carbs. And some people, when they do that, they notice they start craving again because the insulin levels went up. So remember what I said in the very beginning of this? I said when insulin levels are elevated, and if they're staying elevated, you are going to crave. If you don't want to crave, eat in a way where your insulin levels aren't staying elevated. And everybody's different, because if you have insulin resistance, and most adult women do, especially over the age of 40, you have some level of insulin resistance. If you have insulin resistance, then that means your insulin goes up and it's not back down at 3 hours. It's staying up. Now, what does this mean? Okay, so I'm going to stop there. You guys tell me if it's making sense. Just type in and say, it's making sense, Robert. You're doing good. I think we got this. We understand. I got to keep my insulin levels down, right? And everybody's different, because if you have insulin resistance, it's going to take a while. Because the person you are today, when you're still losing weight in 5 months, you're a different person. So you may be able to eat more fast carbs, pasta, bread, all of that stuff, and your insulin goes up and comes right back down. People who have what they call good metabolic flexibility, their insulin levels don't stay up for long periods of time from one meal. They go up because they're, gets secreted right back down. But someone with insulin resistance goes up, stays up, stays up, stays up. And whenever insulin is elevated, biological fact, you cannot release fat. I mean, there is a weird way. There is a weird way, but it's rare. But for the most part, you cannot release fat. Now, when they do studies, they'll do a study where they'll have petri dishes and see if something will work. If it works there, that gives them the confidence, like, hey, let's do it on some rats, or let's do it on some animals. If it works there, then let's take a look at humans. Well, if you were to have a petri dish and you put fat cells in that petri dish, in order for those fat cells to live and thrive, they got to be fed. And if you don't feed them much, the fat cell will start to get smaller. But if you add a little bit of insulin in that petri dish, you could almost starve that fat cell. And guess what? It ain't getting smaller, because insulin is present. So whenever insulin is circulating, you cannot release fat. You want insulin levels down, and then your body will let it out, and then it can be metabolized, oxidized, burned. So at the end of the day, the goal is to learn how, when I say learn how to eat, is learning how to eat where you can optimize not just your sugar levels, but your insulin levels. And that's a big part of the work that we do. Now, people who don't know how to eat the way we teach people how to eat, they'll tell them intermittent fasting. Because if you're not eating, you're not stimulating the release of insulin. And you may be thinking, oh, so that's what I should do. No, because now you're not getting enough protein. So you're going to be losing some skeletal muscle. So it's a balance to it, right? So you want to eat. Eating is a great thing. You just want to eat in a way where you're going to optimize your glycemic, your sugar levels, and optimize your insulin levels. Optimizing both insulin and sugar is how you optimize health. This is why we can say it's hormonal, because insulin is a hormone. Okay. I'm going to stop there. I think you guys get it. So let me see. Cecilia says, I hear that all the time. I'm thinking she's talking about sugar, because a lot of people, they really believe it's sugar. Like I did 3 presentations this morning to a bunch of physicians, nurses, a lot of people in the medical field, and they loved how I had my little screens and I'm showing stuff, and they loved it. And everybody was like, and every time I do that, I get people who want to become a client. Every time I do a presentation, every time, because it makes sense to them. So I love that whole notion of let's make it make sense, and then we can do it. If this is new to you, then that's a sign that you want to start diving in and better understanding it. And I can tell you right now, like get with me or get with one of our coaches, and they will show you how to eat so that you can optimize both your glycemic, your sugar response, and your insulin response. So we're addressing all of that in one way of eating. And then if you can get consistent, and the only thing that's going to block you from consistency is if you fall prey to cravings. So if you eat in a way to bring the cravings down and you stay consistent, you got it. You got it. Then it's just a matter of walking it out, like the song, walk it out, walk it out, walk it out. Oh, okay. So she was referring to intermittent fasting. Okay, let's see. What is Cindy talking about? Cindy says, if insulin resistant, talk about how often we should eat meals and what we should eat for a snack. Okay, great question. So I am a huge believer that everyone benefits, especially if you want to lose weight, to eat 3 meals a day. I know this because there's science that supports it. I know it because we've done our own clinical trials and we've proven it. I know it because I've helped thousands of people over the years do it, and I live it myself. So 3 meals a day that are what we call fat burning meals. They're balanced meals. Now, some of you are like, I don't really eat 3 meals a day. Well, do you have weight to lose? Yeah, that's why. That's one of the reasons why you have weight to lose, because you don't eat enough. 3 meals a day. Space them out however it works best for you. It's very important that you get an adequate amount of protein. I would say that protein in the morning is the most important time to make sure you get an adequate amount of protein, more than any other time in the day. Everyone, go out of your way to make sure you begin your day with an adequate amount of protein. If you can get 30 grams of protein, I think you're doing great. You're breaking records. So 3 meals a day, Cindy. And then if you snack once, which I think is an option. So if you're going to snack, I'm always going to recommend fruit as a snack. Banana, apple, pear, watermelon, any fruit. And why? Because fruit comes with a whole bunch of benefits: added water, polyphenols, antioxidants, all the things that are going to help your gut health. And when your gut health is better, everything's better. Okay. Now, if you didn't want to snack, don't snack. And you know if it was to your benefit to snack based on what your next meal looks like, right? So if you get to your next meal and you find yourself overindulging, you would have benefited from having a snack. Okay. Let me see. Linda, I think Linda makes a point. Let's see. Linda says, learning how to eat is the key. Improve your relationship with food. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Look at Tracy in the house. Tracy, schedule a call. We got a lot to talk about, my friend. But if you guys are getting what I'm saying, okay, and there's a question inside of that, so I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just saying if you're getting this, then we're ahead of the game. That means that I basically just gave away a whole program in this talk. And for those of you who have worked with me, then you got it. So now it's just a matter of how do you become consistent? And then you look at ways or tools that's going to help you expedite, right? So if you can find the right tools, right? Like the balance oil is a tool. I know it helps a lot of parts of your health, a lot. And then I shared a study yesterday where it showed how it helps with fat oxidation. That means fat burning. These are real, like double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trials. We know that it helps with that. We know that it helps with cognition, your memory, and it reduces your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So you look for tools to complement all your other efforts. And at the end of and that's why I thought about the balance oil, because in this study, they showed how the balance oil also helped with insulin sensitivity. Insulin sensitivity is what you want. What you don't want is insulin resistance. You want insulin sensitivity. You don't want insulin resistance. And omega-3s helps with insulin sensitivity. I mean, you can't make this up. We have the best product without question. If there was only one supplement someone's going to take, we have that supplement. There is, I would debate with anybody. I would love to debate with anyone and say, all right, if you had to pick one supplement, what would be yours? And I would say balance oil for me. And then they could say whatever. And there would be some benefit to, I'm sure, these other supplements. I'm just saying if you only could do one, is balance oil. My daughters will always use this product. Always. Because they're experiencing the benefits. And it's just it's like a lot of people have their kids do a multivitamin in the morning. And they're feeling like, I'm being a responsible parent. Yeah, but you don't know if it's working. And it may be doing more damage. So going back to the test, the balance test, we do a test. So I know if it's working. I don't have there's no guessing because I did a test. And it's a legit solid test. I mean, this is where you got to get excited. This is where you get, this is exciting times when you can test something and it shows in the test that the product works. That's powerful. Okay. So I'm going to stop here. If we all got that, we covered insulin. If you guys came in late and there's something, then watch the replay. It'll be there for you to listen to it while you're driving anytime you want. But you just want a really good, strong understanding of the role of insulin and its impact on either preventing you or helping you drop some body fat. But the focus primarily today was, how do I crush cravings? So Sandy said she craves bread. Then Sandy would do really well if she ate in a way where her insulin was down, which means she's not eating bread. Because as soon as she eats bread, her insulin levels are going to go up. Now that's now. But when Sandy drops, let's say 20 pounds, then we kind of got to relook at it, because she may be able to eat bread and it won't cause her insulin levels to go up because her insulin sensitivity is better. So everything gets better as you make progress. As you improve your body composition, as you drop body fat, get rid of that excess body fat and everything, and you're making progress. It's kind of like you see that person who, they seem to be eating all the time. It's like Lisa Marie. Like when you hear her break it down, and when we've had some talks, Lisa Marie will say, yeah, I mean, I've always been, she's 115 pounds or whatever. And here it was, she was making fat burning meals, but didn't know they were fat burning meals. She wasn't eating a lot of junk, but she was eating in a way where her insulin levels were elevated, and she became pre-diabetic, even though she wasn't overweight. Then she made a couple little tweaks, and now she's no longer pre-diabetic. So, I mean, it's really weird when you think about it. It's almost unfair. I could see someone making an argument that it's unfair when it comes to, I like to eat, I want some pancakes, but once you eat some of those things, then you want more of those, or you want something similar to that in a different way. So the cravings are there. So you want to squash the cravings and then create boundaries and a lifestyle where you don't find yourself eating the things that's going to cause your insulin levels to go up, which brings back the cravings, and now you're back on path for all those other problems. Okay. All right, you guys. I wanted to do this. I was talking to one of my clients earlier, and I said, thank you. They reminded me of this. I was like, I'm going to share this information today in hopes of helping people who seem to crave certain things. And now you know. And now the next step is to do what you know, right? And when you start to do what you know, I mean, you're bridging the gap between what you do and what you know. When you bridge that gap, you feel so much better about yourself. Everything just gets better. Not just weight loss, but how you feel, how you think. I mean, people who have insulin resistance, you can see it on their faces. You can see it in their shoulders, right? I mean, there's signs. You can see the discoloring of the skin. That's elevated insulin. And think about it, you go to the doctor all the time and they can see you. They know who you are. And they haven't said anything. And they haven't even done a fasting insulin test, which is just sad. So you can request that next time you go to your doctor. Ask for a fasting insulin test. And what I've learned in the last year is if you ask for a fasting insulin and a fasting glucose test, then you'll more likely get the fasting insulin test with the fasting glucose. If you go in and say, yeah, doc, can I get a fasting insulin test this time? They will think you mean fasting glucose. And when the labs come back, you will not have fasting insulin, but you will have fasting glucose. So ask for both. And then that would include the hemoglobin A1C, your cholesterol panels, and all that stuff. Okay. So, any other questions for me? All right. I think we're good. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll share some good news over the Diet Blues. And if you have not subscribed to our free online newsletter, there is a link provided. Please do so at your convenience. And if you have not gone to our YouTube channel, we're moving slow, but we're on our way. We're growing slowly. We're not declining. We're growing. So I need more people just to go there and just, click on subscribe. And then you'll see an option where it says click, all. You want to be notified on all. So whenever I go live or whenever we upload a video, you'll just be notified. You don't got to watch it. You don't got to stop what you're doing at that time, but you'll know it's there. And you go, oh, Robert's got some new information. And then boom, you can listen to it when it works best for you. Because I do like to build on things. You know what I mean? Like I like to build on what I'm sharing now. And so for people who are with me and following and informed, then when I talk about insulin again, I can talk about something a little bit deeper. All right, you got it. All right, you guys, until the next one. God bless.